I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Oh yeah, welcome ladies and gentlemen, movie lovers everywhere. We, on tonight's Anatomy of a Movie, are doing something a little bit different. We're talking with director, writer, and actor Adam Green. We're going to be focusing on his movie, Digging Up the Marrow, but he has quite a collection in the genre of horror. It's exciting. And this song that we're actually listening to, I do want to highlight it because it's by Hog. It's called Get a Job. And you picked this song out because it's not in this movie, but it's in another one of your movies, correct?
It's the theme song to my TV show, Holliston. So when you guys asked, like, oh, is there a song? I was like, well, not from Digging Up the Marrow, but oh yeah, this one.
There you go.
Yeah.
It is a cool song. This is my first time hearing. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, not enough people knew that band. They were around for like 2 minutes in I think '95, but ever since I heard that song, I was like, that would be such a good intro to a sitcom, and thankfully we got it.
Very cool. And allow me to introduce Marisa Serafini to my right, my co-host for today.
Hello, everybody.
I, of course, am Phil Svitek, and as mentioned, we have Adam Green in studio.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
There's so much to talk about with you. I mean, first off, I'm a Boston guy. You're a Boston guy. We just saw the Patriots win
Barely.
the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Hey, a win's a win.
Yes, they did win, but those last 2 minutes were agonizing.
Absolutely. And on another interesting note, you do a podcast called the Movie Crypt over on Geek Nation and on iTunes.
Yes. We had started that podcast when season 2 of Holliston was airing about 2 years ago. And we thought that it was just going to be for the 10 weeks that it was airing. And then all of a sudden it just turned into this huge thing. So just about a month ago, Entertainment Weekly put us in their top 20 podcasts on the internet, which was amazing. I think because there's like 285,000 podcasts. And now we're averaging between like 400 and 500,000 listeners every Monday. So it's great. And it's kind of like what you guys do. It's just like super in-depth stuff about filmmaking. But the guests who come on are so brutally honest, usually because they're friends or they're people we've worked with. So they feel really comfortable just like unloading. So you hear some pretty shocking things.
Here's the toughest question. I've heard various people ask, but I've never gotten the chance to ask it. If for anyone who hasn't listened to your podcast, what would be the quintessential episode to listen to get hooked of like, this is what the show is about?
It would be a tie between Jordan Peele's episode, Jordan Peele from Key and Peele, or Darren Bousman, who directed Saw 2, 3, and 4. Mm-hmm. The stories that those guys had to tell were just phenomenal and things that I don't think anybody knows. And
are you friends with those guys in particular, or was you were able to book them and you befriend them through the show?
Yeah, everybody who comes on is somebody that we're friends with or know in real life. Although Jordan, that was the night that I met him. He had reached out to me, and I was so excited because I'm such a fan of that show. I think it's like the best show on TV. So we've become friends since then. But but everybody else who comes on is somebody that we already know.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's great to have a place where you can just go and talk to about movies, and that's exactly what we do here. And to have you here, I mean, you said all your fun guests that you've had in the past, that they have great stories, and you have a great story as well.
I hope, yeah.
I mean, do you find has your business model, because of the podcast, changed in the sense that now that you have that direct connection to your fans, you're able to promote your movies better? Like, has it altered you as a filmmaker?
That's a really, really good question. And I guess we'll find out because this upcoming release of Digging Up the Marrow, it comes out on VOD February 20th and also in theaters. And so this will really be the first release since having this podcast. So let's just say like 100,000 of those people were to think like, you know what, I've been listening to this thing for almost 2 years, 2 hours, 3 hours a week of free content, all of this stuff, never had to pay a dime for it. Maybe I'll just buy this DVD from ArieScope, from my company. That would change everything. You know, I mean, it would be huge. But unfortunately, we live in an era where art has become kind of, I don't want to use the word worthless, but worthless to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people choose to torrent things or pirate them. They don't think they should ever pay for content anymore. And so you've had to sort of start thinking outside the box and sort of how to survive. There was a time, even just like 7-8 years ago, where DVD and Blu-ray was where it was at. And that's what everybody was hoping for, no matter how big or small the film was. But now most people watch things on Netflix or it's streaming, and the actual revenue that goes back to the distributor is very, very marginalized. So it's tough. But thankfully, especially in the horror genre, the fans are like, I mean, you can't even compare them to anything else. Like, they're collectors and they want to own the stuff, and they'll drive 4 or 5 hours to a theater that's playing the movie that they want to see. And so over the 17 years that my company's been going, and this is going to be our 9th feature, it's the fans have carried us this whole way. So we'll see. But I'm curious to find out if the podcast does have any bearing on that. Like, we're pretty careful to not promote too much. Like, even the guests who come on, they come on just to tell their Hollywood story, as opposed to coming on specifically to promote an upcoming release. I think we caved for that once. Joe Lettieri, who's been nominated for 9 Oscars and won 4 for visual effects. He came on when the last Planet of the Apes movie was coming out. And that was one where the publicist called and booked it. And so we were just, you can't say no to that. So,
yeah.
But normally people don't come on just to promote. It's more of like a learning tool.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, that's one of the reasons why we love sort of, you know, we got into this, we love that direct connection with fans and the honesty. You know, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And most people, we do the video form and the audio form, but you're connecting directly to one fan, you know.
Yes.
Even in a TV, you know, you can have multiple people watching the same TV show in a living room. I know that's dying down a little bit, but now this is, again, that direct 1-to-1 connection.
And I think that's really kind of the key, and that's always been how I've done it, is to personalize it for people. The first like movie that I ever did was called Hatchet, and that was what really launched everything. And I mean, it's become a franchise since then with 2 sequels. But when we realized that the distribution model was such that it was going to go in theaters, which was great, but it was only going in 80 theaters, which is like the weirdest number ever. Normally you do like 1,500 or 2,000 theaters or 2, but we were in 80. Don't ask me how that model happened. And there was no marketing. There was no commercials. There was no billboards. So like, how was anybody going to know? So I spent like a year and a half doing every festival, every convention, like campaigning, like I was running for president, kissing babies, like whatever I had to do to let people know about it. And it worked. I think that people responded to hearing the story about this kid from Holliston, Massachusetts, who wanted to make a slasher movie, and just being honest about the whole process. I think that really helped. And the fan base I have is so loyal and so... we had, on the TV show, we lost a cast member last year, Dave Brocky, who, if you like metal, you would know the band Guar. He passed away suddenly in March, and he was one of my closest friends. And so the show's kind of been on hiatus since then. And the fans, I mean, a lot of people, you know, they'll write because they want an autograph or they want you to sign something and send it back. But we get, I mean, so many letters every day, dozens and dozens of letters. And they're sending gifts or cards or candy or just saying like, you know, I'm sorry that happened and I'm thinking about you and I hope you're okay. They don't want anything. Mm-hmm. Coming into the studio like a few days after it happened, and there's like candles and flowers and teddy bears outside, and it's amazing. And I don't think a lot of filmmakers have that. So we're very, very lucky in this group that we've sort of harnessed, and how nice they are to each other too. They'll come to conventions wearing a Holliston Nation shirt or a Hatchet Army shirt, knowing nobody, and leave with like 5 or 10 new friends. I mean, everybody's really cool to each other and really nice. So there's a sense of community there. And I think the horror genre's got that more than any other genre. Like, you don't see romantic comedy conventions or even action movie, you know, but with horror, people are really nice, which is funny because if you're an outsider, you think of us as weird, you know, like the eyeliner and the tattoos and all the other stuff. I mean, not me, but everybody else. But if you just look a little bit deeper, you'll see that there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah, what is it about your films? Because yes, the horror genre and the fans, in a collective whole, they're avid, true fans and loyal in that way. But what is it, do you think, about your films that your fans keep coming back to all your movies and love so much? It seems like your films all have a human connection and you can relate to people in that way. And I think what people would really can levitate to.
Yeah, I think the fact that aside from the sequels to Hatchet, no two films are the same. We always change it up and offer something different, and everything's very original. Like this one that's about to come out, Digging Up the Marrow, like I don't even know what you can really compare it to. So that's one way that I think we keep that connection. And then the fact that there's a face to all of it. It's like, it's not just a random name on the screen as like who's presenting it or directing it or whatever. Like they know who I am. They know who Will Barratt is, who's the DP for 17 years now. They know who Corey Neal is or Sarah Elbert or all the people who work with us. So I think personalizing it it's just really made a difference. And I was asked earlier today in an interview what my style is, and I don't know how to answer that because no two films are really the same. So,
but do you have techniques that you perhaps learned from one film that you're like, oh, now this isn't in my tool bag. I'm gonna create a sequence or a scene, whatever it may be, knowing that I have this in my toolkit.
Yes, but then I don't necessarily use it again.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, when I think of like what's your style, it would be like when you watch a movie, you know you're gonna get the J.J. Abrams lens flare all over the place. So you're going to get, whatever the thing is that you've come to expect. I think when you look at my body of work, no two things are really the same. But what they do have in common is how much of myself that I put into them. There's such a deeply personal level, like a movie like Frozen, for instance. All the stories that the characters tell while they're stuck on that chairlift are stories from my real life. And you can tell when you watch it. Clearly this happened to somebody. Holliston, the sitcom, is based on my life. I'm in it playing myself, and I'm just wearing my heart on my sleeve all the time. And now in Digging Up the Marrow, I'm actually in it really as myself, as opposed to playing like a character version of myself. But I think that that's something that's found a connection with a great number of people, and I think that that's what they gravitate towards.
So let's start with let's no pun intended. Well, maybe so. Dig in a little bit, right? I always hate when people say no pun intended, but you meant it.
Yeah.
So I'll cop to it. But you open up the movie and it's documentary style, and you see images of your movies within the opening sequence and things like that. And so you're already so anyone who's seen your past body of work, they're already connected right off the bat, and I find that very interesting.
Yeah, once we had made the decision to use ourselves as the subject matter, it was very difficult. Like that was the most difficult aspect of all of it, because there was never the intention for the movie to feel like self-serving or like an advertisement for all the other movies. But what makes this movie so much more interesting is that it's a real cult filmmaker and it's real people. Now, if we had made up a fake filmmaker with fake movies they had made, who works at a fake studio with a fake crew and has fake fans, it wouldn't be the same movie. So now that's not to say that everybody who sees Digging Up the Marrow is going to be familiar with me or the other movies. They might think it is fake. They might be like, Hatchet, like they couldn't have made up something better. But for a great number of people, that makes the movie feel very, very real and grounded for them. And then as the movie progresses, it starts diving into this fantasy world that hopefully you can suspend your disbelief that much more. And we thought it was going to be a very polarizing movie when we finished it. And so far across the board, I mean, the reviews, the screenings we've had, it's been amazing how people have been able to really embrace how weird and different it is. So
when you say polarizing, meaning they either like it or they dislike it, and you're saying now they're really gravitating towards it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like I thought there'd be people that just didn't get it. Like the fact that there's so much of it that's real, yet it's a monster movie, and the fact that like Ray Wise is playing a character, but nobody else is in the movie. And that was another difficult decision to make. And it was because, you know, if we had cast an unknown as William Decker in the movie, and let's say Ray Wise wasn't in it, we'd be running the risk of people believing that it was real. And then when a monster shows up, or at a certain point, then they'd be like, wait a minute, this isn't real. And then it would all become about, oh, they didn't fool me, and like this is a hoax, and I'm not falling for this. And we don't want any of that. Like, it's a movie. It's a scripted movie. It's just being told in a very unusual way. So there were a couple people, you know, when you first finish and you're trying to like lock the edit, and you start showing other directors and producers that you trust and asking for their opinions on it, and people are, you know, brutally honest. And there was one producer who had said, you know, your biggest mistake was casting Ray Wise. And I said, why? You didn't like him in it? And he's like, oh no. He's like, I think it's some of his best work. He said, but as soon as he showed up, I knew that this wasn't real. And I said, so 10 minutes later, when a monster showed up, you were going to think this was real? And he was like, oh yeah. So so I thought there was going to be more of that with audiences, or with critics especially, like not thinking the decision through, just instantly jumping to oh, well, but think about it. Like, you were never going to think it was real. You're not supposed to think it's real. It's a monster movie. It's just being told in a very grounded, real way. But I think that, you know, like I said before, if we had made up a fictitious filmmaker and fake people and all that, you wouldn't have connected and believed it that quickly.
Gotcha.
Right. And I know for the monster and the fantasy aspect, to bring the fantasy demographic into it, do you think that would help with the horror storytelling of your film? For the believability, that for the end result that you want, that the extra scare and the twist in the end, do you think adding the fantasy level really helps elevate the story?
Yeah, for sure. I think that if you take a real life situation, like right now, if I was to tell you that, like, all right, nobody else knows this, but I'm going to tell you guys, like, the world is going to end at 11 o'clock tonight. You know, that's so ridiculous or whatever, but because you're real people and I'm a real person, and if I'm saying this and I really mean it, like, and then all of a sudden, like, there's an earthquake in 15 minutes and like it starts to, you know, you buy it. You're going to go with it. So, by the way, the world's not going to end tonight. It's next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
Whatever time you're listening to this, the night of that.
Yes.
That's
So,
good.
absolutely. You know, if you don't mind, I always love talking kind of cameras and things like that. And, you know, I always love the process, you know, and because, you know, I've wanted to be a filmmaker. I went to film school, so did Marisa and things like that. And it's always interesting to learn, okay, like, you know, what's your pre-production process like? What's your shooting process like? And I know you said you don't have a style, but is there, you know, do you have a method of kind of going about, you know, various things that you found successful, you know, or that you've learned from one to the next to be better at it?
It's different for every project, of course. And since Frozen, we haven't shot on 35 millimeter. It's kind of being like phased out, which is so sad. But over the past couple of years, like the Red cameras, the Alexas, like they've come so far. And if you have a great Panavision lens package in front of that camera, I mean, aside from, there's certain things like blood splatter or rain or like quick movements where I feel like you can still tell that it's video. I just do. But that being said, I mean, it's come so far and stuff is looking so good. One thing that I don't waste time on anymore is shot listing everything or storyboarding everything. I usually will storyboard action sequences or like stunts or gore effects just to make sure that everybody knows what the shots are and what needs to be done, your stunt coordinators, your makeup effects, and then sticking to that. They're no good if you do that and then all of a sudden you move the camera somewhere else, because like a gore effect, for instance, like ripping somebody's head off. If you design that shot to happen behind the body, well, the makeup crew is going to build that so that the back of the head that the camera's seeing looks very realistic, but they're not going to spend money doing a proper life cast of the person if you're never going to see that. Then all of a sudden on the day, if you move the camera on the side, now you've blown the whole thing. So if you're going to storyboard, you got to really stick to it. But I find that, like with Frozen, for instance, as an example, you got 3 characters stuck on a chair. We knew that we had to keep changing up how we were shooting it, because you can't do the whole thing in close-ups or wides or just keep the camera spinning, because after 90 minutes, like, where's it going to go? But what I did was I followed it emotionally. And so in doing rehearsals, watching what was actually happening between the actors. And one thing that I do in every movie is, like, when I meet with actors, I like to meet with them one-on-one first. And when we discuss their motivations and their feelings, we don't discuss that with the other actors. And I feel like that can bring a great, especially with drama, it can bring a great amount of tension. Like, for instance, for people that have seen Frozen, Kevin Zegers plays Dan and Emma Bell plays Parker, and they're boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, he brought her skiing today and on the day of this event, and she's thinking, when I met with her, I'm like, where do you see your relationship going? And she's like, well, this is a huge step that he actually brought me skiing with his best friend. He's integrating me more into his life, and, like, I think he's the one. But when I met with Kevin Zegers, he was like, I'm going to break up with her today. He's like, this was like the final shot of just making myself wake up and realize, like, this is not the right girl for me, and she's not going to integrate with my life. And I purposely told, they did not speak to each other about that. So when you watch the movie again, watch their faces. Like, she'll say something where she wants to be comforted, and the way he reacts, you can see the confusion in her eyes and her trying to process it, because it's not what she was expecting. And if you can do that to your actors, and the same thing with Digging Up the Marrow, like, there's purposely a lot of backstory to the character of William Decker that's left a little bit ambivalent, and it's better to have the audience try to figure stuff out. And people got to remember, like, the audience is very smart. And you don't have to spoon feed them every single thing. And they like thinking. It's okay to think. Yeah. I didn't spell it out to Ray. I didn't say, this is what your real backstory is, and this is what's in that storage closet, and this is your family history. I said, I know what I think it is, but I want you to come up with what you think it is, and let's never talk about that. And then you see in the movie how frustrated I'm actually getting with him, or that I think I know something and I don't. And then when we were done filming, we compared notes to what we thought, and we were, like, right on the same page, which was terrific. But I think that you gotta go that extra step in pre-production and in working with your actors, and really play. Make it real. Even if it's a silly slasher movie, if your actors don't believe it and they're not really scared and they're not really into it, then nobody's going to be. I mean, you all know when you go to see a movie like Hatchet, they're all going to die, like, or at least most of them are. That's what you're paying to see. That's no huge surprise. And people say, oh, it's predictable. I knew that. I knew people were going to get killed. Like, congratulations, man. Like, you figured out the slasher movie. But all the actors in that movie just went for it, and they had fun with it. And they weren't allowed to see Victor Crowley unless it was the moment of their demise on camera. So their terror is real.
So let me ask this, because that's good to hear, I mean, for me in general, anytime you can make it about the characters and the actors, I feel like the movie has a shot, right? And I feel like, I hear so many young filmmakers that are like, oh, again, going back to the style and the technique. They have a style and a technique, and that's what they're going after, and everything else is secondary. So when you watch, whether horror movies or other movies, do you kind of notice that right off the bat of what someone's really going for, and they really care about the characters, or they're just doing it just because, again, they have a style, and if it's a slasher movie, like, hey, we're going to kill off people in the coolest way?
I've seen directors grow. Like, I've watched some of their early work, and you can tell that the only thing they cared about was the gags or the shots or the camera movement, because you can tell the actors have no idea what movie they're actually in or what's going on. And then in speaking with people afterwards, whether it's the director themselves, the actors, people on that crew, they'll admit it. They'll be like, yeah, we only had this much time, and I was more focused on getting the Steadicam move right or whatever. I didn't really have time to sit and spoon feed it to them. And then you'll watch their next piece and you start seeing it come closer and closer together. I think because I've always acted, I like actors. There's a lot of directors that don't like actors, and I get it. It's hard because you have a million things to worry about, and then you have somebody who you literally have to babysit sometimes. I don't know how, and I can say this because I'm also an actor, but I don't know how actors exist in real life outside of sets sometimes. Like, it the simplest thing. They can't do it themselves. If somebody else has to do it for them because they're in actor mode. And that can be frustrating. But I love actors. I love working with them. And I think they appreciate that you're willing to geek out with them. You know, it's like sitting down with somebody and being like, all right, in this scene that you're walking into, you're crying because of something that happened. It's never going to be discussed, and we don't see what happened before this, but let's talk about it. What happened earlier in your day? And get them thinking about that and coming from someplace and really becoming that person. And I think that you get just a much better performance. And also to be open, not just to, you know, your DP and producers, but your actors as well. Like, they'll have ideas. It might even be like for a shot or an angle or who knows what it is, but listen. I've seen so many directors pass up great opportunities over ego. Like, they're threatened and they feel like if they say, oh yeah, that is a good idea, let's do what he's saying, that suddenly they've lost like power or something. That's the ultimate power, showing that you're that confident that you can welcome in other ideas. Like directors who yell on set, like that, as soon as you yell, you've lost you'll never get them back. You're pathetic to everybody. Yeah. So I've never done that either. Thank God. It's just you know, make it as collaborative as you can.
So be open to the characters and the actors and the personal storylines, and be character driven, which actually adds to the storytelling of your films. But also, you know, visually and cinematography wise, and you mentioned your DP for certain angles and whatnot. Digging Up the Marrow is there are some scenes where it's very like guerrilla shooting, handheld camera style, which really adds to that frenetic energy that you get a lot in horror films. Do you do that for most of your films, or do you find that type of cinematography style just something that really adds to horror?
I'm not a huge fan of handheld unless it's like really motivated, and I feel like it's a trope that too many filmmakers fall back on, thinking, well, this is like an action scene, so if I just keep shaking the camera, the audience is going to... No, you're just nauseating people. Like, you shouldn't have to fall back on that to make people feel intensity. Now, with Digging Up the Marrow, because we're supposed to be making a documentary, it was a little bit different. But even those few moments of handheld or, you know, shaky cam, they're used very, very sparingly, and they're over before you know it. But that's something that was meticulously planned out. We knew, okay, for this moment, this is how we're going to shoot that. Like, there's a scene where we're in a car and something really awful happens outside of the car. And so for that one, we knew that had to be handheld and it had to play out as one shot. But if you look at something like, again, I'll go back to Frozen, when Kevin Zeger's character jumps off the lift, the camera is basically attached to a body and falls straight down. And that, you know, when you watch it with a crowd, everybody loses their breath, and because it's like you can't escape, and you're not watching it from an angle, you're there living it and falling all the way straight down to the ground. So you really feel his legs break when it happens, like it happened to you. That stuff all has to be planned out way before you ever get to set. So as far as that type of style stuff, yeah, of course, like every shot is planned out. And thankfully, I've been able to work with the same cinematographer for 17 years now. So we have a shorthand where I can just say like a word and he knows what I mean. There's never a time when, if I'm off working with the actors, where I come back and we're supposed to be ready to shoot, and all of a sudden it's not what I wanted it to be, or like something's wrong and it needs to be addressed. So we're able to shoot really, really fast and get a lot done. With the sitcom, I think our biggest day in season 2, we shot 38 pages in one day. Wow. And grant, that's multi-camera, you know, so it's a lot like doing theater. But the actors rehearse for like 3 months before we get there. So you know what jokes, you know the jokes are working before you get there. And now with some sitcoms, you have the luxury of a staff of writers off to the side. You're only shooting that one episode that night or parts of it. And if a joke isn't landing with the audience, you know, you have a whole team there that's pitching a different one. We don't have that luxury, and our audience is very small and impatient. So, so we have to be very well prepared when we get to set. And if we know our stuff as a cast, then I mean, you got 3 cameras on it. You only need to run it so many times. Yeah. So we're able to cover a lot of ground.
Very cool. And so Digging Up the Marrow, you know, you have a friend named Alex, and what's his? I don't want to butcher his last name.
Pardee.
Pardee. Now he's a friend of yours, but you've never worked with him in this capacity. But he inspired the imagery and everything else for this movie. So how did that, symbiosis come about?
It's such a good story. When we got back from Sundance after Frozen had premiered, it was like a dream, like where every review was amazing. You have people like Rex Reed saying, "I predict instant box office gold," and like this movie's amazing. And we had people throwing up in the theater or fainting. And I've since learned that happens at like every Sundance midnight movie, so I'm not as proud of it anymore. But we were really excited. And unfortunately, the producers of the film, they had a first look deal with a company called Overture, who everyone was expecting to put this film out and promote it, like 15 or 20 million in marketing and 2,000 screens. Like out of everything we've ever done, that was the movie where we felt like we had it. And then Overture went out of business right when like Sundance was happening. And the movie got kicked down to Anchor Bay, who I wouldn't have a career without Anchor Bay. They put out my first 4 films and I love them, but they can't do a big theatrical release, or at least back then they couldn't. Maybe since it's changed. But again, on 100 screens, there was a billboard up in LA, and like that was it. And even that was up just so we would see it. So we were depressed, and it just, bad timing and bad luck. And I was saying to the rest of the people at my company, like looking back at the very first movie that Will Barratt and I had made, it was called Coffee and Donuts, and we made it for $400. We had jobs making really bad local cable commercials in Boston, and we would steal the equipment at night and just shoot. And I said, why don't we do something like that again? I mean, not that low budget, but let's come up with something where we don't need to answer to outside producers or a distributor or sell off the rights before we even know what we have. Like, let's make something where no one even knows what we're doing. And everyone was like, what? And I just randomly picked up this fan mail that was on my desk from a guy who... fans send weird stuff sometimes, but some of it's super creative. And this one was a letter saying that Victor Crowley from the Hatchet movies is real, and I messed it all up, and I didn't tell the story correctly. And it had pictures of swamps with areas circled, like in the movie you say Honey Island Swamp, that's nowhere near where he was really born. And this is a character I made up when I was 8. But it was just really creative. And so I said to everybody, what if we just take a camera and let's go down to New Orleans and let's interview this guy and have him prove that Victor Crowley's real, and it'll be really funny, and because he won't be able to, obviously. And we'll, I don't know, maybe it'll just be a funny short film. And of course, like the next Hatchet sequel was coming out in a few months, and we didn't want to do anything with that character. And I think what really cured me of it was when Will Barratt said, and what happens when this kid deliverances you out in the swamp? And I was like, oh yeah, let's not do this. So we threw it out. And then the very next week, I'm at a convention doing a signing, and somebody comes through the line with a pamphlet called Digging Up the Marrow, and just hands it to me and says, I just wanted to thank you for the inspiration, and walks away. Didn't want a picture, an autograph, anything. And I was like, okay, that was cool. And I'm reading the pamphlet that night, and I'm looking at this artwork, and I realized, like, oh, wait, that was Alex Pardee. Like, I know this artwork. I didn't know what he looked like. I'd never met him before. And every exhibit that Alex does, it's so much more than just artwork hung in a gallery. There's always a story, and it's like an immersive experience. And for Digging Up the Marrow, it was that a former Boston police detective named William Decker had contacted him and commissioned him to paint these creatures that he claims he's seen in this world called the Marrow. And so I'm reading that, and it all just clicked. I'm like, what if William Decker contacted a cult filmmaker because he's trying to get his story out, and it was me. And just like what just happened, the package that I got, but it was from William Decker, and he's fake, but everybody else is real. So, and then what if the monsters actually look like Alex's artwork? Because his artwork is, I mean, there's nothing else like it out there. He's one of the greatest artists ever. And I mean, he's going to be so big. He already is, but like, Tarantino's using him for stuff, and Zack Snyder's using him for stuff, and then me, but he'll keep moving up, you know.
But to be in that lineup with those other big names as well, I mean, that you have to feel good about yourself too. I
mean, I guess, but that's all him. But it's, you know, so he's way more than just the person who designed the monsters. Like, this whole thing was such a collaboration, and it was this cool way to bring art, like traditional art, and the art of film together as one thing. And it was a 4-year process to make this thing because we wanted to do it all on our own. So it was sort of shot in pieces around other things. Like while we made this movie, we also made Hatchet 2, Hatchet 3, Chillerama, and 2 seasons of Holliston during the making of this movie. So it was a long process and one of the best that I've ever had. And we just sort of handpicked the best of the best for crew. And everybody kept it totally quiet. And all we would say is, oh, we're making an art documentary. And then nobody was interested. So like if you ever want to stay anonymous, just say you're making an art documentary, and everyone, they can't get away fast enough. But you know, we have such good relationships with a lot of the genre sites and press that if we had said, oh, we're making a movie, but you can't have a set visit, and we're not going to tell you who's in it, and you can't have stills, they would have soured on it before we even made it, because they want access, they want the right to know that. So we just said we're making an art documentary, and they all left us alone. And then the trailer came out just a few weeks ago, and that was always the goal with this, was to hit people right away. Like we only did one film festival, Fright Fest in London, which is the best for horror in the world, and we only played one screen, and it was the small screen, the 300-seat theater one, and nobody who came knew what they were coming to see. There was no stills, no trailer. And I said to the audience before the movie, I said, how cool is it that you're seeing something and nothing has been spoiled for you? You have no idea what you're in for. And the fact that you guys sold out this screen is awesome, because it means that you trust me at this point. So I promise I didn't abuse your trust, and I think you're going to like this. Feel free to say whatever you thought about it afterwards, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, but just don't ruin the experience that you're about to have for anybody else. And every single person, fans, critics, they all honored that. And thankfully, they also all liked it. So that was just the right way to do this movie, not do 50 festivals and all these pre-screenings and put out 50 clips so that everybody's basically seen the movie before it comes out. I think that the experience of not really knowing what it is the best way to see it. But yeah, this collaboration with Alex was just perfect, and he's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly won't be able to slight the media anymore.
No.
Like next time you say you're making an art documentary, like, oh yeah, okay,
right.
I don't believe that one bit.
My next one's actually a Holocaust comedy. So if people want set visits, they can contact the ArieScope office.
There you go. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we sort of wrap things up?
I mean, again, the movie opens on February 20th. And we'll be on VOD everywhere. So wherever you watch movies, it will be there. Not on Netflix yet, but that'll be...
That's always like a second tier anyway.
Yeah. The DVD and Blu-ray is March 24th. And it's great because there's a great commentary on it with all of us. But there's also almost 30 minutes of deleted and extended scenes that are actually good scenes. And then there's a 30-minute making of on just the monsters and how we brought those to life. Because that was a lot of the budget of this film, was making those monsters as cool as they are. So the DVD and Blu-ray is definitely worth the purchase. And then we're touring the movie leading up to that. So it's the movie, the art exhibit, one of the monsters from the movie will be there. So that starts in San Francisco on Thursday, February 12th. And then we're in Boston at the Kendall Square Theater on Monday the 16th. And then we're at the Landmark Sunshine in New York City on Tuesday the 17th. And then the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin on the 18th. And then here in LA at the Regal in Westwood on the 19th. That was awesome. Did you see that?
That was
like, wow. So yeah, if you can get out to one of the tour stops, I can't recommend it enough. It's $15 for a ticket. So, I mean, less than seeing a 3D movie here. And you're going to get a movie, the Q&A, us in person, an art exhibit, and to take pictures with one of the monsters. I mean, you can't really beat that.
That's just in general. It's just even when you just the art exhibit too, cause how it's so tied into this movie. Like that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I think getting back to what I was saying in the very beginning about thinking outside the box. Give people more. It's not enough now just to have a good movie. It's sad, but it's not. It's not enough. So go the extra mile. Give them a reason to get up and spend their hard-earned money to come out and see a movie the right way.
Especially for, the types of fans, as we've talked, the horror fans, they love these types of things. So you're not going to see a romantic comedy. You want it to be an event, an experience, and it's really cool that you're given that,
Yeah, I mean, we're trying real hard. And, to anybody else who's watching this or listening who wants to do this, it's like, I'm just a kid from Holliston, Massachusetts, in the middle of nowhere, and I found a way. And I've been finding a way during like the worst time to be finding a way, because the industry is in such turmoil and transition with streaming and piracy and all the other changes that are happening with technology. But it will work out. It'll work itself out. It always does. But if I can do it, you can do it too. And don't be disenchanted by all the negativity, all the closed doors, all the people are going to tell you no, all the people that are going to tell you suck. We all get that. Nobody exists who everybody likes. No, there's no movie that everybody likes. Somebody once gave me the advice, I think when the first Hatchet came out, and I was actually getting hurt by certain reviews or things, and it was bothering me. They said, look up your favorite movie on IMDb and go look at those message boards. So I looked up Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I think we can all agree is a good movie.
Film.
Yeah, like 16,000 people rated it a 1. It was like and we're writing things like worst movie ever. And I was like, oh wait, that's right. The world is full of idiots. But it helped. It made me realize, like, oh wait a minute, this happens to everybody. Even somebody who's that great, like Steven Spielberg, gets this. So you can deal with it. So don't give up and don't let it sour you. I've seen so many people who came out here 15 years ago this week was when I landed here, and they're not here anymore. They got so fed up with it and how unfair it is and how ridiculous it is. Like, why did that get made and this didn't? And it could because.
I equate it to, it's like this business, it's a shaking tree and people are throwing rocks at you. If you can just hang on, you will find success. And that's it, just hang on.
And the way you hang on is to surround yourself with good, real people and love what you do. If you don't love what you're doing, then don't do this. I mean, this is just masochism. So like you gotta love it. You gotta love the process, and you gotta love the people you're working with. And if you have that, then let everything else happen. Let them throw their stones. Let them say you suck. Let them, whatever it's gonna be. You can handle it. But don't sour. Don't become that bitter person who's angry that something else had success. Every time any movie succeeds, it's good for everybody. So don't be jealous over it. Applaud it and hope that you're next. So that's, I think, the most real advice I can give anybody. And you mentioned the podcast, the Movie Crypt. It's on Geek Nation and iTunes, and we do like a 2-hour thing, kind of similar to this, just talking about like the craft
and every Monday,
the business.
right? You said
every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, a new episode airs.
Very cool.
Great.
It's definitely fans of Anatomy. Check that out. We know you love movies, so another great podcast for you guys to listen to. Thank you, Adam Green, for joining us. It's been fun. Your Twitter is
at Adam_FN_Green.
And it's the letters FN.
Yes.
All right. Because I know that got our engineer Steven confused too, so I want to make sure fans know exactly what the Twitter's and the website for Digging Up the Marrow.
You can just go to my website, the company's website. It's ArieScope.com, ARIESCOPE.com, and you'll see stuff on all of our movies, the trailers for them. There's like something like 60 or 70 free short films to watch on there. My blog, there's links to the podcast. There's ticketing links for the Marrow tour and all the information there. And what else is on there? There's so much. It's really a really good website. I mean, we started it like 17 years ago, and it's just built. And but you can see all the news and everything that's going on there. That's usually the best place to go.
All right, well, very cool. And for any fans that hasn't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so at youtube.com/Popcorn Talk Network. And of course, comment on iTunes and all that other good stuff. We love hearing from you guys, and comment below on the video as well. We'll see you here for another Anatomy of a Movie.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.